Hey guys, it's Rockula, and this is Rockula Retrospective. Tonight we're going to talk about The Walking Dead episode 14 called The Grove and my reaction and review. Boy, did they go there. So, this is what I like about this show. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, you're like me, you watch the shows, you kind of flirt with spoiler issues, you'll look at the wiki stuff, and you'll go there just to confirm an age or a date or any of this other stuff, but you really don't want to be spoiled. And then they come up, and you think they're going to do one thing, you think that the audience expects the other thing, and then they do the third thing. Tonight was the third thing that they always do. They lull you into thinking that you're all comfortable, and then they punch you in the gut. And this was a punch you in the gut episode. So, coming right up, it's quite obvious. Lizzie's got a problem. Lizzie's got a big problem with reality. Mika's got little girl problems, and they're normal little girl problems. And that's the whole point about these two girls in this episode is it deals with what are children going to have to deal with when they're growing up after the turn. I mean, you've got people that are adults now and teenagers and so forth. You're looking at Glenn, who was kind of like an early adult. Anyways, those people have to deal with that world's gone, this world's here. But children, especially ones that are born or are sentient, I guess you could call them, right around the turn, they're having a whole bunch of weird kind of conflicts in their head because they don't even know what humanity is yet. So what you're dealing with is Lizzie is completely over here in left field about what humans and walkers are. And Mika is having normal child conflict about killing. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't want to kill animals. I didn't want to kill anything. And for a little kid, the only time you really find either of them killing each other, anything, is when they're being physically threatened. So what we have here is like the other episode was about Daryl's inner conflict. This is about Lizzie and Mika's conflicts to become human beings. And as we all saw, didn't work out so well. So when they get into this house, oh wait, first of all, what they're doing is they're walking down the tracks, and Mika says something about the dead rabbit comment. And normally, when you look at like any movie, any kind of TV show where you got siblings and one of them's trying to get away with something, as soon as it's usually the younger one says something, and then the other one goes, "Shut up!" She didn't even do that. She doesn't care. She is so out there, right? So when we get into this house, Mika finds a doll, and I'm thinking that, is this doll going to be symbolic? And it does turn out to be somewhat symbolic, because what we see now here is Mika is a normal child, and she has a doll which all normal human children fixate, or female children fixate on, where they both learn how to be responsible for something, and they also learn how to project their expectations on life upon the doll, and it helps them to intellectualize what it's like to be a female human growing up. Now over here on the far left side of the brain, we got Lizzie, who is trying to make a doll playmate out of a walker. And I don't know if anybody recognized it, but I did. She was calling the walker Griselda. Lizzie called her doll Griselda, Mika called her doll Griselda, and Lizzie was just spaced out like usual. And the next thing you know, Lizzie wants her own doll to project her feelings of, becoming a girl, human, whatever. And she's so screwed in the head, she's projecting into walkers. And so that's her big fatal mistake, is that people, I guess, can start projecting themselves into walkers. Stepping outside of the box here, if you look at the book World War Z, you had people that kind of did the same thing, in that they reverted into acting like a walker. I forget what they're called. If anybody is watching, can comment below. Tell me what they called the walkers or the zombies in World War Z, where it was a human acting like a zombie because they just lost their mind. So they end up using that doll for more symbolism at the end there. So then we have the moment. Yeah, I thought I knew what was going on. I thought, we see, here comes, they're running away from the walkers, and Mika trips, and I'm like, here's where Mika gets bit, and Carol has to make the decision, just like I predicted, right? Whew, boy, I never could have figured that this would happen, come back. Obviously, we see Lizzie has stabbed her younger sister because she wants to prove the point that walkers are people too. And yeah, that's when they really realize that Lizzie ain't very long for this world, and she, even if they let her live, she's not going to survive. And so that's what we got now, is we go over to Tyrese and Carol talking about it. And here's where Carol almost gives it up about the big secret about who killed Karen and David. Now, Tyrese starts to put two and two together, and he starts coming up with the things that a lot of us came up with, which is kind of cool, because you can watch a character on the show trying to figure out the same things that you were like, wait a second, if Lizzie killed Karen and David, then Carol did this and that. Now we get into the point where we realize Lizzie never would have killed a human or a walker unless, obviously, like we saw, they were trying to attack him. And oh, by the way, good as time as any, walker kill of the night. I know people, by the way, I just thought of this walker kill of the night thing, and zombie kill of the night, whatever. And somebody's like, hey, they do that on The Talking Dead. And you know what? I don't want to copy other people, but if I thought of something and somebody else was doing it, but I didn't know about it, my idea, everybody has the same idea. There's a million people doing the exact same thing, so who cares if you're going to hate that I stole from The Talking Dead? I never watch it. I hate Chris Hardwick. He bothers me. So let's go back to this here. We got Carol and Tyrese, and she almost gives it up. And we found out that, Lizzie didn't kill Karen and David, that Carol did, but she almost gives it up. And we get into another moment where we examine not only the impetus of this particular series, but anytime you have the world gets reset at zero, whether it's a disaster movie, a nuclear war movie, or zombies, or I don't think vampires count, but whatever. You've got year zero, the turn in this case, which I think is a great word for it. But the turn has set everybody back at zero. So what Tyrese and Carol are working out there is that Tyrese is haunted by the memory of Karen, and then Carol kind of crystallizes everything, and she says that they're teaching us so that we can live with what we have to do. And this is the central focus of every single story that begins with a year zero, and that is there is a collective consciousness about the human race where we're linked to each other even if we hate each other or don't even know each other. And Hence, you'll see somebody back before recorded history or communication where somebody over here in this country would have an idea and somebody over here within about 10 years would have the same idea, and yet they had no way of knowing each other. So what you got here is every time a human being gets killed, it erases part of human history and creates a hole in the human collective subconscious. And just like here's a nerd quote, just like a million souls crying out and then all of a sudden they're silenced, fragments of the human race are being erased every time you kill a human or every time a human turns into a walker. So that means the reason to live now is to continue to tell the story of the human race with as many different points of view as possible, because we all know that Washington, was the father of our country and Abe Lincoln freed the slaves, but what we as a people want to know is Jedediah Johnson, who died in a trench during the Civil War. And the more people that survive, the more people that get to at least hold on to what is quickly vanishing as the human collective subconscious. All right, we're coming up on something that was really cool when Carol was talking to Tyrese, and my friend Meat Pie just brought this up to me. Carol, when she had to kill Lizzie and Mika's father, told them to look at the flowers. First thing and the last thing that Carol ever said to Lizzie was, look at the flowers. So that's pretty ironic, don't you think? And here we go with our common sense moment of the night. And so let's set the scene here. You're in a forest. You're about to execute a little girl that you're having a loud screaming match with. Shoot her in the back of the head. You turn around, and there's a deer going, hey, what's up? See ya. Not buying it. You shot a gun within a mile of a deer, that thing is going to run. So, not buying that. But once again, TV show. All right, now let's talk about Tyrese for a second. Tyrese is the character in this episode that I most identify with because he has this kind of a duality that occurred before the turn, and now he's struggling with it afterwards. So you're talking about Daryl, who's struggling with his life, and should he go back to it before the turn? And what we look at here with Tyrese is that this guy is incredibly sensitive, and I'm sure he's kind of like the rest of us, like me, who have the filter wide open and everything comes in, and they're so sensitive that they get overloaded by it. So whenever he has joy, you notice he's really happy, but when he's down, he's just zoned out because he is so overloaded with the ugliness that he just has to shut off. So that one of the things that happens with people that are really sensitive is they start to kind of develop this attitude about leadership roles, and that is they don't really like being leaders. Like me, I don't like being a leader because you don't want to deal with what happens when you disappoint everybody, when you don't live up to their expectations of you being a leader. So this is why you see Tyrese constantly deferring to Carol, because he knows that he'd rather be the guy that Carol points and says, Tyrese, kill, and he goes and kills, and he's the protector, but he really looks up to Carol and her life knowledge, with the kids, with whether they should stop and get water, everything. So he, in some ways, is referring back to the way he was, but he's also struggling with, he's also an incredibly passionate man, so he also gave up his need for vengeance. And you could tell it was burning him up, but when he found out it was Carol, all of a sudden, just like before, he realized, man, somebody's got to take care of this baby, even though the twins are gone, or the girls are gone. And he just realizes that people are going to have to do things in the new world that they don't want to do. And when Carol slid that gun to Tyrese, I know that if I was in that spot and I was somewhere after the turn and somebody had killed somebody that I love, that, let's face it, may or may not have made it, and then they slide a gun and basically throw themselves upon my mercy, because that's what Carol did, is threw herself upon his mercy. So that would convince me that somebody did what they thought they had to do, but are completely haunted by it if they're willing to give up their life for it. So I predicted it. Carol and Tyrese made up. So let's look at a correction.
Correction.
Our correction comes from the Nappy D on YouTube, and he sent me a Walking Dead Wikia link that, thankfully, it wasn't too spoilery, because I try not to go to, I go to the Wikipedia page for The Walking Dead because it keeps it all nice and compartmentalized. But the Walking Dead Wikia, they mix in some spoilery stuff, and I watch that at my leisure, at my peril. So yeah, thanks to the Nappy D who sent me a link to show me that Beth was 18 in the Daryl and Beth episode, and she was 16 when she was at the farm in season 2. So thanks, Nappy D. And we are also looking at what's coming up next here. I watched the trailer a couple of times for the preview for the new episode. Looks like we got Daryl getting beaten into the gang. A lot of people are thinking, oh man, does the gang turn on Daryl? No, this guy's getting beaten in like every other gang beats in a member. And that's just what it is. We see Rick, but not Michonne and Carl. And Carl, we'll see what happens with them. I still can't tell. Glenn's group is headed towards Terminus because Seamus says so. And since we're talking about Seamus and Sergeant Abraham Ford, here's number 2. And this is Dr. Eugene Porter. Can anybody tell me who he looks like? And I'll give you a hint. He was an entertainer from the 90s. I can't go any further than that, because if I tell you what kind of entertainer, it'll give it right away. So coming up in the midweek re-review and predictions for episode 15, I will reveal who I think Dr. Eugene Porter looks like, and I will have re-reviewed the reviewers, and I'll give you my summation of what everybody's talking about. This is going to be one of the most talked about episodes. If everybody hated Daryl, I'm sure, I haven't read any or watched anybody's review yet. I'm sure people are going to have their brains are going to be exploding over this episode. So let's see what happens with my predictions for episode 15. And let's see what everybody says. All right. See you in a couple of days. This is Rockula Retrospective.